What is going on, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic today. Today, we're going to be talking about qualifiers from last weekend. Actually, such a sick tournament. We haven't had such a kind of eye-opening one in a really long time since like last Worlds. But I mean, I guess you're at qualifiers. It's got to be a great time. The EU teams played fantastic. It kind of brought up this idea of online EU NA league again, or like a LAN league over in EU, something like that, because the EU teams played absolutely phenomenal, and it makes it really exciting for this actual Worlds to see how they stack up against the best the SPL has to offer. Are they at that level to compete with those top three teams, namely the Kings, Levi's, and Dragons, or do they just have enough to make it into the league and not really make too much noise there? But either way, very interesting. We're going to be talking about all the teams, some of the gods we saw. This will be a two-parter for qualies right now, and then we'll have a predictions video probably tomorrow. Kind of a lot of information to stuff into one video, so I figured it'd be best to just have two. So looking at Group A, we had the Titans and the Ravens qualifying, the Valks, Hounds not making it. It's kind of funny that the Titans and Ravens played first, and the Valks and Hounds played first, and the teams that played first kind of made it through. Didn't really expect that, to be honest. I thought if one of the teams made it out of Group A that wasn't going to be the Valks, I thought it was going to be the Hounds, but I mean, they played the Ravens. The Ravens looked phenomenal. And yeah, the Ravens actually won that. Starting with the Titans, this really weird style of Smite that they play really suits them. It throws off teams that aren't really prepped for them. That full damage Athena solo that Solo loves, it's so sick. If teams are not ready to like play against a split push, try to 1v1 someone, the Athena ults over, stuff like that. The set mid, nobody really plays set mid like Paul does. I know other mids play it. You'll probably see Pegon play it, but really only Paul brings it out and makes it look as deadly as he does. When he played it against Angry, apparently Angry's a big set player, and even Angry was kind of caught off guard a couple times. I don't know if Angry was uncomfortable. Maybe he doesn't play against set a lot. He plays set. I didn't know he played set. Somebody actually told me. I was told that Angry was a set player. But Paul just is different on set, and he kind of punished Angry a few times. Moving on to the Ravens look a lot better when they can play just a normal brand of Smite. When the Ravens played the Valks, when the Ravens played the Hounds, they played great. They just looked like they could compete with these teams, and they looked like the better team, to be honest. When they played against the Titans just looked like they were playing against a minor league team. I don't know if this Titans team is just that good, or if the Ravens just weren't really prepped for it. They weren't prepped for the set or the Athena, or just how the Titans kind of play. Could have been Sino on the Chungle too. Nobody plays the Chungle except Sino, so it could have been that also. But the Ravens played very, very good against the Hounds. They made the Hounds look a lot worse than I thought the Hounds were going to, and they made the Valks look a lot worse. I think we can chalk up the Valks weekend to just them kind of being nervous, it almost seemed. Kirmi and Gamma didn't play particularly well, and it sucks that it's like the last time of the year that they have to like kind of prove themselves, and they kind of had not a great performance. They still had a great year. Those two are probably the MVPs for me over the entire year. Unfortunately, on such a big stage, I do think they played not too great. Kirmi looked like he was just trying to make too many plays too often. Gamma was not particularly great like he usually was. He usually kind of gave Wowie a really good laning phase. A couple times Wowie came out of lane with a somewhat decent lead, but he still wouldn't do too much with it. And then a lot of hate is going towards Benny for his god pool. He said, I don't know if it was on Twitter or something, or where on stream, but he said that they've been playing Persephone a lot and they were winning a lot in scrims. So you can't fault the man for playing it in SPL, even if everybody else is looking down on it. If they play that Persephone and they win, it's going to be like, okay, that Persephone is sick. Maybe the other teams are going to have to play it. They did lose, so it's like, why is he playing it? Why didn't he just play the best gods? But I think it's a bit of a lame way to look at it when it's just like, oh, play these really good gods. It's not like he's playing something like Cthulhu or Terra like he did at the beginning of the year. He's playing a normal mage. They just lost. It's not like they won the games he didn't play Persephone, so I think it's a bit of a lame way to look at it. I thought Benny played fine. Also, I think Aqua played fine. Just a tough weekend overall for the Valks. Hounds, they just seemed so 50-50. I don't know if it was nerves, but some games they just looked like worried to do anything or like scared to do anything. And they were kind of on the back foot. And they kind of left Ducky out to dry a few times. And then Ducky was making some unbelievable plays also. I don't know exactly what it was. I would chalk it up to them being nervous too, because this is their first time on LAN, like actually playing for something. And it's the same thing with the Valks. This is the Valks' first time on LAN playing for something this big. Like, this is the chance at Worlds. So if you haven't played like sports or something else, just to like be used to that pressure that you're under, it can break some players. And I think that's kind of what happened with the Hounds and Valks. The Hounds did play very well against the Valks. They did stumble versus the Ravens. I think the Ravens kind of brought it to this really basic style of Smite, and the Ravens just did it better than the Hounds. And then I think the Titans just play this weird style that I don't think the Hounds are really ready for. Like I said, that Titans team, very weird. If you're not ready for that style, you're not going to be playing too well against it. But overall, you got to be happy a little bit if you're the Hounds. You showed that you can play against these SPL teams, so big for them. Next up, the Mambo Probably the most surprising team coming out of this. They were actually the last team chosen in the, I don't know what they named it, like the SPL, like pick your teammate or pick your opponent for Worlds thing. They were the last team chosen, so they actually were given to the Bolts, which is mad respect considering they won their group, the Titans won their group. The Titans were chose actually before the Warriors also, so it seems like a lot of people just thought Group B was just a more difficult group, or the Titans or the Levi's just knew that they have had the Titans number all year, and they're just like, we're comfortable with them, so we're going to take them. We're going back to that Mambo style. That's kind of just what European Smite is all about. They play this very slow, meticulous, but very smart style. Johnny knows when to team fight, when to group up, when to just push. Deathwalker knows when he needs to actually fight, when he needs to just slow down somebody from farming, when he needs to rotate. Zeros, I think the Chronos is a little iffy, but it still didn't look that bad, and I think with a little bit more practice or against these better teams, I think it can look really good. And then Ecrom and Trix just played pretty well Smite also, but this Mambo team really comes down to this solo jungle, Johnny, and Deathwalker performance. If they play well, there's some noise that could be made at Worlds, but it's really down to them, and then the other three just playing good Smite. Onto the Warriors. They just still feel like a very meh team. You have some good consistency out of the side laners. Vote, Nika, very consistent. Dardes, a lot of the time, very consistent. I think Fred and Neil are just these kind of go big or go home type players. Neil gets picked a lot when he shouldn't. Cuvo goes in or misses abilities when it's like really important that he hits them. Also just engages at weird times. I think it just shows that this team just has some really clear downsides also. There's still this team where if you go 30 minutes against them and you have to team fight against Dardes, Nika, Vote, Cuvo, Neil, they're going to play very well. That's what they're very, very good at. But before then, they have to get to that point where they're full build 5v5ing, and I think that's their weakness. That early game, that mid game, they just play very sloppy, and I think if other teams can exploit that, I think it leaves this Warriors team open. Next up is the Storm. I mean, they made it. They didn't play particularly well. I think another one of nerves caught these guys. I think Dane played very well this weekend. He looked like the pressure wasn't too much for him. He was making a lot of good plays. Zen didn't look too good. Delny looked fine, but he just looked a little outmatched some games. Overall, I think the Storm team just was out of their league a little bit. They played fine, but it's not like they played good enough to win anything. Lastly, the Scarabs. Scary just didn't have a very good weekend. It sucks when you're at like this. It's kind of like Kirmi. Kirmi played pretty poor this weekend, but they had an overall like a pretty solid phase. Scary actually had a few games towards the end of the year where he was kind of the GOAT on their team. So it sucks that you go into this qualifiers and you expect a big weekend out of Scary, and he just doesn't kind of bring it forward. I think Sam actually had a very good game, almost brought them back to beating this Warriors team or competing for that final spot on the final day. I mean, they played well. They didn't have a ton of time to improve. They were like, what, a month, maybe 2 months as a full team with them 5. Actually, I think it was probably closer to a month than 2 months. So it's unfortunate that they had to go into the tournament, but they played well. They should be pretty happy with their performance. Taking a look at the gods, solo lane was funky this weekend. It was very, very funky. I think the normal thing is Hades sees a lot of bans, picked when he's not banned. He's still phenomenal. Nobody really wants to play against Hades because of how well he does everything. He's still really good. He's good early. He's really good mid game, and he's really good late game. No other solo laner really has that. I think Warrior and support builds Warrior and solo builds are just not great right now. So I think that is a bit of a problem for solo, and that's why you see a lot of Hades being picked up. Bologna was picked up the most of anyone because she didn't see very many bans. She went 3 and 8. I was talking about this on my stream, and I think Bologna was just completely overpicked. I was talking to some of the solo laners, and it was mostly just because she's one of the few solos that competes against these ADCs late game. But even then, it just seemed like she would win for the first 5 minutes, and then she would get ganked, and she would die, and she would get ganked, and she would die. Or she would be playing against a Tyr or an Alma, and they would just clear her, out rotate, out pressure at level 7. So I think this Bologna pick doesn't make a ton of sense a lot of the times. I hope it doesn't get picked as much at Worlds because I think it is very limiting in what you can do with it. And then the next 2 gods I want to talk about as a little bit of a pairing, but Alma and Tyr, I think those are the 2 next solo laners that you need to be playing. Neither of them really die in the laning phase. I think Tyr's better in the laning phase. Alma's mostly just trying to get to her golden blade and then start clearing and running around. But once they get to their mid games, they clear, they can fight, they can rotate, they can backline dive, they can peel, they can just do just about anything. The only weakness they have is their early game is not the greatest. And it's mostly for Alma than Tyr. Tyr had a really good weekend. Alma had a really good weekend. Alma went 7 and 3. I think Tyr was picked a lot less because he was banned a lot more. So I hope we see kind of like Hades, Alma, Tyr for solo lane, and a little less Bologna, maybe more as like a counter pick, last pick, because I think she's still fine, but I just think she was over prioritized. Look at that jungle. Nem had this pretty big resurgence. She went 6-1 this weekend. Absolutely phenomenal. With 25% pick rate. She's picked a quarter of the time. A lot of the times, some of the other junglers were banned. Jungle actually saw a lot of bans, like it usually does, because it's an OP role. But I think we'll see a lot of Nim at Worlds, that means. She does lack in CC, but you can make up for it playing a Guardian in the solo lane or playing either Tier or Alma to make up for that CC. Also, another reason I think Bellona's a little bit worse. She doesn't have CC, like those two gods do. But Nem looks absolutely great. We have to touch on the Dodgy. Dodgy was not picked at all. I could not find it how many times she was picked, but she was picked less than 4 times. Less than 4 times, that she was the best jungler perma-banned this entire phase, this entire year almost. She did see 70% bans, so that's part of it. But even when she was left open, a lot of the time she wasn't even picked. I think that has to be more of these junglers don't want to play it. I think when we get to the Worlds, I've got to have a feeling that they're going to be played, or that she's going to be played. I think Twig's going to be picking her. Panatom will be picking her. Surely Scream. Well, Scream maybe not, because I know Scream doesn't really like Dodgy. And then Laz, I think those 3 at least have got to be picking Dodgy. She still is the exact same character with just slightly longer cooldowns on her ult. Her build is fine right now. Her build is good. So I think it was a little weird seeing her not picked. It might be partially because she has not a great matchup into Naja. But even then, it's still just a really, really good pick. And what she does late game is not matched by anyone else. Going into mid lane, Agni out of nowhere. 9 picks. Just absolutely crazy. I didn't even hear rumblings of Agni being played. I think this means that Agni was played in scrims. It was winning a lot in scrims, whether it was SPL scrims or SEC scrims or a combination of both, and it's going to be played at Worlds. I have no idea about Agni. I don't have a real guess either. It looks good. It has good matchups into a few of the other mid laners, but yeah, I'm not too sure about the Agni. I don't know if it was like a flavor pick for this tournament or somebody played it right before the tournament and it looked really good. Whatever it was, Agni, a lot of picks. Chronos, also a lot of picks. I don't think it looked great. I think if you're picking Chronos in mid, you're lacking a lot of area damage and you're kind of reliant on that in this current meta of Smite. A lot of the mid laners that were picked not named Chronos, Agni, Merlins, Babas, Vulcan, next up. They just do a lot more in terms of area damage, and Chronos doesn't have that. Chronos is very single target, and he's not very good mid-game, while these other characters have decent mid-games. I think Chronos is something that we should put on the back burner a little bit. I think if I'm an EU team, like I'm the Mambo, like I'm the Ravens, I think I'd rather see the Baba a little bit more. I think Baba is very, very good for them, but yeah, Chronos, maybe not so much. And then another thing, for mid laners, Vulcan was picked 3 times this tournament. He was picked nearly every game coming into this, and now he's just not picked at all? 3 times over the entire tournament. Absolutely crazy. I expect to see him picked at Worlds. What he does is just unmatched by any other mid laner. He clears well. He's hard to dive. He gives you extra damage on objectives, which other mages really don't because of his turret. So Vulcan, I think we should be prepared to see Vulcan at Worlds. Not too surprising, or really surprising that he's picked 3 times. Moving on to support, Maui is him. 15 picks. He was seen over half of the games. I think we'll see some bans actually for Maui. He's so strong, man. They buffed him. He was already good. He's strong. That's all there is to it. Maui is him. Yamoja, not picked, like, at all. I don't remember a single Yamoja game. Maybe there was one. I think there was one Yamoja game. Where'd she go? Same thing as Dodgy. Absolutely phenomenal coming in. Not played at all. I expect to see Yamoja for Worlds. I guess she's not as big in these SPL teams as she is for like Genetics, Rongyu, Mike, Jake. They play Yamoja a lot more. So I think it's more they just didn't want to play Yamoja. They wanted to play something that's a little bit more aggressive early. Also, Ymir, even after his nerf, he went 6-0 at this tournament. 6-0. Maybe the wall being 4.5 seconds is still so strong. Maybe he didn't even need a buff after it. I thought he needed a little buff after it because I think his wall being so meh early game and late game, or early game and mid game, would hinder him a lot. 4.5 seconds and 6 seconds isn't that big late game, but you couldn't throw it up as much also. And lastly, touching on ADC, Ishtar, the pick of the tournament, 100% pick ban rate. She does everything for an ADC: CC, safety, damage, clearing, 2v2, 1v1, objective damage, 1v1 damage, safety damage, peel, setup, builds, crit, builds pen, poke. Literally everything in the game is done by this character. I expect to see Ishtar at hopefully another 100% pick ban rate at Worlds, because the ADC is one of the most. If it's OP, you have to pick it or ban it. And Ishtar right now is that. CERN is actually next up with a 96% pick ban rate. He's kind of Ishtar like light. Ishtar's Coke, he's Diet Coke. Ishtar's orange juice with no pulp. CERN is orange juice with full extra pulp. So CERN, next up pick if Ishtar's banned. I expect to see a lot of Ishtar bans at Worlds, which means also CERN might be getting banned also if he's kind of paired with Ishtar as like the next absolute best. We'll see. And then if those two are banned, which they were a lot, Ramo is next up. He looked really good. I think he needs to be drafted around a little bit better. There were some games where he was played as a frontline killing machine, and I think he works best right now to follow up with dive. I think he's good if you want to kill the person in front of you, but having no CC makes it feel a little bit weird if your mid laner doesn't have CC and your support's lacking a little bit, or if your support's diving. I think he still looks really good. I think I would like to see a little bit more Dans. I think the Dans looks really, really good right now, but Rama still looks very good. I'm down to pick it. And that is a little recap on the qualifiers. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys are having a wonderful rest of your day. Worlds in 3 days. Hope you guys are there. If you guys are there, say hello. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you guys next time. Peace.